Sponsored by Winwing Technologies. They couldn't offer the full cockpit, but we think this is the next best thing. Hello valued viewers, I hope you're all doing wonderfully well. Today we're in the relatively new Mirage F1CE that we've just got. Today in a single video we are going to try and cover the following control setup. Cold start, mid-air restart, which you'll need if you're going to fly this plane by the way. Taxi, takeoff, landing. A lot of stuff, so let's get stuck in. First, setting up your controls on your HOTAS. I've got about 4 or 5 hours in this plane now, and I'm getting a fairly good idea of which controls we need. So let's go through it. Adjust controls, select the Mirage up here, and we're going to start here with axes, commands. First thing to say at this point, this is very early access, and these control names probably are going to change over the next few months. So just bear in mind that, please. Axes, pretty much the same as all aircraft that you're going to fly. Pitch, obviously, you're going to have your stick pitch there. Roll, obviously, you're going to have your roll there. I'm assuming you're using a HOTAS and rudder pedals, obviously. Rudder, obviously, you've got your rudder pedals there, your axes, and the way I like to tune it is with a plus 25 curve there. Gives you a bit more control around the smaller areas of movement. Thrust, obviously, you've got your thrust lever there. Wheel brakes. I've got toe brakes on my MFG pedals, so obviously I've set them there as left and right toe brakes. Finally, zoom view. I've got an axis on my Winwing throttle controller. That gives me an axis for zooming in, for zooming out. Those are my axes, and those are my normal ones I set for pretty much every aircraft. Now let's go to the non-axes commands. These are the more important ones for you guys. I will try and do this in a logical fashion, but I won't be able to describe where every single button is. I'll just give you a rough idea. If you happen to have an F18 Winwing stick, then I can actually share my file with you. You can just copy it over yours. Why don't we start on the stick side of the HOTAS. First, to fire the gun, you will want that there. Remember, these names may change slightly in their syntax over the next few months, so just bear that in mind. Next, to drop a bomb or fire a rocket, you'll want that one there. Next, radar master modes. There are 3 of them. We've got BVR mode, I like to call it. Telemeter zone scanning switch, that will probably change the name of that, but that's center. There is TEL. TEL is an ACM, close range mode, with a 10 by 10 degree search area, up to 4 miles. And BPZ, similar to TEL, up to 4 miles, but it's 20 by 20 degree search area. Next, if I want to lock a target on the radar in BVR or center mode, I press and hold lock on. If I want to lose that radar target lock, I press once, unlocking control. Next, trim, super simple. Nose up, nose down, roll left, roll right. Next, my dogfight mode. You'll want this somewhere easy to press somewhere on your stick. That, whatever that says, that's dogfight mode on. That is how you turn dogfight mode off. Finally, on my stick, I've got nose wheel steering switch, or nose wheel steering high sensitivity, and that's the same place I have it for all of my aircraft based on the Hornet. That is my stick complete. I've got a couple of spare bits on there on my Winwing in case things change in the future, which they probably will with different versions and new weapons. Next, we're going to move on to the thrust lever. So, we've got a 4-way switch, and on that I've got air brake on, air brake off, flaps up, flaps landing position. That's bad syntax. It doesn't actually mean flaps landing position. What that means is actually increment flaps down. Press that, the flaps will come down a bit. Press it again, they come down further. Press it up, they increment up a bit. Press up again, they come up a bit further. So just bear in mind, those will almost certainly change the names of them as well. I probably won't keep updating this video when they change the names because they change them so often now in DCS, it's just becoming an impossibility. So you're just going to have to figure that out yourselves. What else have we got? We've got a binary button for zoom in, zoom out. So you want to zoom in so you can see things better and zoom out. Countermeasures. You've only got one button you need to actually press on your HOTAS. Chaff, flares, release button. Everything else you'll do on this thing in the background here. One more button. This Cannon 300 missile lock, unlock. It changes the cannon sight between 300 and 600 meter. It also does something else, and we haven't figured out what else it does yet. It says unlock button. It doesn't actually do that. I haven't actually figured out exactly what it does yet. What I can tell you is from my experience, it's going to be important, so I suggest setting this somewhere. That's the stick and the throttle. Let's move on to what I currently have on the keyboard, and is probably going to be moved to the hotels at a later date. Obviously, I'm still learning this. I haven't had early access, so I'm doing it as I go. 4 or 5 hours in it so far. Auto start and auto stop. You'll probably do the start procedure once and then never do it again if you're anything like me. So if you want to start it, auto start. If you want to stop, auto stop. That does the full starter procedure and the full start down procedure. Next, if you're going to do landings in this plane, it lands very fast and has terrible wheel brakes. You'll want to press this. Brake chute control aft open. That'll probably change the name of that as well. Next, if you want to fire the gun, you're going to need to press this. Gun firing safety out and gun firing trigger unfolded. I have no idea really what they mean. Simba just told me I have to press them, so I have to press them. Finally, we've got radar controls. The radar controls are extremely difficult to understand, so we will go through them. We've got 10 radar controls. Let's start with tilting the radar elevation up and down. You're going to need up, that there. I'm not even going to try and say it. Elevation increase. Down, that there. Next, if you want to zoom the display in or out, I've got that there. Scale left or scale right. Doesn't actually work very well, I found. You'll probably want to actually press the button on the left console. Next, the scan width selection. You might want to have this bound, you might not. If you want to, it's that one and that one. Next, if I want to move the alidade or the cursor around on the screen, if I want to move up and down, I've got that. Velocity increase, down, decrease. Want to move it left and right? Bearing control left, bearing control right. One more important thing we've just realised I forgot is combat flaps. It's modal. You'll turn it on and off, and I'm going to turn it on with that one there. And then when I want to turn it off, you press that one there. Again, the syntax will change. So that's the basic controls for controlling pretty much all of the functions of the jet that you're going to need. Like I said, I've got loads of experience, and I can guarantee these names are going to change soon. When they do, just use your common sense. You'll find them pretty easily, guys. Remember, also, they're in categories. Categories are a really easy way of making sense of this. So if I want to go to radar, stick, I've just got my radar controls there. So make use of that. Right, that's controls. Go and do it. And I will also supply a wing template map if you want to just copy it onto your computer and use exactly what I'm using. Now for the cold start. This is a freshly spawned in aircraft that is completely unstarted. That's an important point to make first of all. Before we do this procedure, note you don't actually have to do it. If you're strapped for time like I often am, just press left win and home and it will do it all for you. And if you can't wait for it to start up, left control and Zulu will actually speed up time. And then when it's finished, left shift and Zulu will slow down. That will give you a fully started plane in just a few seconds. And then you can go off and fly and have fun. But if you want to do the proper procedure, which a lot of you will, let's go and do it. Now the beautiful thing about this aircraft is it's written it all down for you. So right shift and kilo will give you the checklist. Little arrows at the bottom. Okay. Let's start the checklist. It starts from here, entering cockpit, and goes next page, and next page, and next page, and next page, and ends up next page. There. So you've got 5 or 6 pages of stuff to do. Now, if you're a real milsim guy who wants to really pretend that he's a real pilot, you're going to do every single one of those. Obviously, I'm not. We're going to give you the absolute minimum things you need to do because that's just how we fly. So let's start on page 1. Strip down GR version. Check parking brake is pulled. That's this guy here. You will want to do that just so we don't roll away. That will get very annoying quickly. Battery on. This number 5. Down here, hopefully you can see that. On. The cockpit is very dark. Sorry about that. I can't help that. Warning horn on. Warning horn on. Ooh, that's very annoying. Cancel the master caution. There. Next, oxygen. I suppose we should check it. Kind of need it to live. Check this guy's doing a thing. And it is. Cabin lighting. Really important. Every single plane I do, the first thing I do once the electric's on are to turn on all of the rheostats to make it as light as possible. A lot of the cockpits in game are just way too dark. You know, our eyes in here aren't as good as our real eyes. And so we need to make everything as light as we possibly can. That's where we depart from this list here. Or should I say that you should continue the cabin checks if you've not working in a fresh spawn. This is a fresh spawn, so I can tell all of these switches are already set how they are here. If you've shut down from a previous flight and you're restarting, then you will need to go and do these checks. Otherwise, you're going to get some weird results. But we're from a fresh spawn. We don't need to. And I want to save time. Skip. And all of that, thankfully, skip. We rejoin at startup 1. Canopy. We need to grab it. Pull. And left click to seal. Ping. Sealed. Next, low pressure main cock. Left hand and right hand low pressure pumps. Zoom in on this panel here, which is our engine panel. That is the cock. And we can lower that down now. Left pump. Right pump. Our igniter. We can either use left or right. And I don't really understand how this works, but I just use left. I'm not even sure if it's modelled. Lift the guard on the starter button. Before we press the start button, there's an important point to make at this point. In standard configuration at the moment, the aircraft in a fresh plane starts with the throttle in idle. This is the idle position, like fully back. And if you move it about, there's idle. Okay, it shouldn't be there. It should be stopped. So to stop it, or cage it, it's called, click on the little button there. Ping, it's now caged. That's how we should be starting. We're going to now push the start button for about a second. And we're going to watch the tacho increase here. Watch the big hand on the tacho, and the big hand on the tacho gets to 300, which it does. Move the throttle into idle position. There. And it should now start. Bit weird to remember, but that's just how it is at the moment. Alright, let it settle down at about 3k. That's our engine self-regulating. Okay, we can get rid of that little cap there. That's the startup done. We move on to after start now, a bit like aftershave. High lift device to normal. It's that one there, and it will be in normal anyway, so don't worry about it. Combat flap lever in. This is an important one. It's actually on the throttle there. That there is combat lever. There is in, there is out. There is in, there is out. So it's in standard, and you don't have to worry about it, but just in case you are a warrior, that's how you put it in. Next, radios. UHF radio back here to Marche on. UHF, VHF radio here. PAL on. Next, change the wattage. I'm pretty sure this isn't even modelled, but it says goes to 5 watts on the UHF, so we're going to go to 5 watts. Next, inverter reset. This is kind of hard to get to, so stick with me. You've got to wiggle your head down here. How you do this without track AR or VR, I don't know how, but it's that one there. Left click, momentary. There. Next. Servos. No idea what this does, but it does something. Push servo button. Ping. Done. Next, trim. Make sure your trim is neutral, especially if you've just come off another flight. Super important. These are the trim. We can tell the trim down here. Watch, for instance, if I would trim left. Trim. Trim right. Trim. Pitch up. Pitch down. Just make sure those guys are in the middle. Simple as that. While we're down here, hydraulic pressures. Hydraulic system 1, hydraulic system 2. Make sure they're up here at about 20, and they are. Good. IFF is just above. System is here, and we want to put the master selector to standby. Pretty sure this isn't modelled, but for the time being, put it to standby. Next page, navigation indicator. So to the HSI, horizontal situation indicator, is this one here. The selector here is currently set to AR, ARET, means off. We want to move it to TE, unless required otherwise. Next, some small switches down here. Backup ADI, on. Electro Pompe, whatever the heck that is, on. Probe heater switch, on. Radar warning receiver, on. While we're here, let's turn our HUD on. Currently ARET, let's make it Marche, on. Next, radar selector, which is this guy here, off, standby or warm up, and on. Keep it in standby, the middle selection. Next, we've got some navigation stuff to do. Let's go down to here. This is too big to pronounce, but this one here, make it go to GM. This one here, make it go to Marche or on. TACAN to receive. That is that ring around. These are pyramid dials. That ring around the outside there. Right click to receive. VOR-ILS navigation. That ring there. Right click. Marche on. Master navigator selector. This lower ring here to whatever you want. I'm going to go to TACAN. And we're going to go back to the environmental panel. Aircon. Marche on. And this guy, make sure it's an auto. Next, standby ADI, which is up the front here. Uncage it by left click and then mouse scroll wheel to center it. And you'll probably need to do that again just before you take off. It says to test the RWR. That doesn't work at the moment. It's that switch there. Doesn't work, so there you go. Flight controls. Apparently you've got to check the flight controls. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. They work. Next thingy. Before taxi, altimeters. Set the air pressure of the barometric altimeters. That one. That one, they should be set as standard, to be honest. They're probably at sea level, but you might want to set it to an airfield, for instance. And if I were to set it to this airfield, I would just zero it for that. But you'd probably just leave it at sea level. Parking brake, release. Oof. Gotta check the brakes apparently. So, toe brakes on, left, right, power up, 6,000. Ooh. Yep, they work. We're now on to before lineup. Helmet, visor, press the H button. Boof. I don't like it. It makes it too dark, so I'm not going to fly with it. Check warning lights here. Check warning lights here. No warning lights. All is good. You'll note that I'm doing all of this before I actually do the lineup and stuff. I like to do it all here before I move. It's not realistic, no, but it means that it's just easier to get it all done. Then I go and do the taxi, and then I do the lineup. Radar, obviously you're not supposed to put the radar on when you're out here with the men in front of you because you would fry them, but this is a game, it's not real, so I'm going to turn it on now, otherwise I'm guaranteed to forget. TACAN, transmit receive, don't really need to, but why not, let's just do it. Ping, slats and flaps, I'm going to set the trailing edge flaps now to takeoff. I'm going to press the button that you need to do that, flaps down, check the indicators, ping, set. And there are the slats. Whole stuff here about emergency regulator switch and emergency regulation light. And there's the switch there. I can't work out what it's all about, and I assume it's not modded anyway, so I just leave it. Move on. And that, sir, is our cold start. So just to remind you, what I've done is I've taken this full checklist that is fully milsim. I've stripped probably 70% of it out, and I've just done the bits that I think you need to do for an operational plane. You can now take off and do your master arm and pretty much start firing your weapons and stuff. Next, emergency engine air relight. If you fly the Mirage F1, this is something you're going to get used to because you can stall the engine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a pretend dogfight with a pretend baddie. I'm going to pull copious amounts of angle of attack, and I'm going to stall my engine by accident, and then we're going to have a panic. I think it's gone. Engine's gone. Engine's stalled. Let's look at the tacho. It's going down and down and down and down. Right, think. Engine stalled. Back into emergency self-preservation mode. Right, chill. Airspeed. Get the airspeed up. Get the nose down. Just get the plane so it's not falling out the sky. I'm aware of that. Silence the horn. Alright, chill. Stop it. Next. Push the emergency air relight button. Sorry, I'm going to pause there. It's that one there, and you've got to push it forward. Back to idle. Now, we've got to windmill the engine up to at least 1100 RPM and sustain that or above. And that means I've got to basically fly at a glide slope that allows me to windmill the engine round. Windmilling means forcing air through the engine so that it spins the engine round, and then it will relight as long as I maintain 1100 RPM or more for a long enough time. This means you will need some airspeed, you will need some altitude to do this. If you stall down at 1,000 feet, you're not going to get it relit. This is, of course, the bad thing of a single-engine fighter, even an F-16. If you stall low down, you pretty much got to eject. So let's try and do that. So all we've got to do is a balance, a bit of nose down. We don't need to go straight down. 200 knots, that's not enough. You can see it going back up. We've hit 1100. Let's get even faster. 230 knots. 240 knots. 250 knots, 1300 RPM. There it goes, done it all itself. All I had to do is do that. Burner on, boom, engine restarted. You can do that, as far as I'm aware, as many times as you like. Welcome back to the ground. We're now going to do taxi to runway, takeoff and landing. First thing to mention is we're going to do this GR style. We're going to give you the stripped down way of doing it rather than the milsim way, because that's what I'm good at doing. To show you which control inputs I'm doing, I'm going to put this guy on the screen at the bottom left. You can see my stick, rudder pedals, toe brakes, and throttle. Regards nose wheel steering, it is on as default. You don't have to turn it on per se, but if you want extra gain on it to turn really tight, push and hold that button there. Be careful if you do. You need to be going very slow and have really good control if you're going to do that. Another thing is this plane will tip over. In fact, why don't I just go and show you? Haha, it will tip over. So be sensitive about what you're doing. I'm coming back, I'll see. And like the F-16, it is really easy to tip over when you're in a hurry. Okay, I'm going to try and remember everything I want to say. RC, please taxi us to the runway. We are GR, we're not going to pretend to be real pilots, but also just keep the plane under control. Don't taxi over about 40 knots. I mean, 40 knots will get you court-martialed in real life probably, but just keep control and make sure you've got enough room to stop and not bang into someone, because you'll really pee someone off on a multiplayer server if you bang into them. So these kind of speeds that we're doing is what we'll actually do in a real mission. Obviously I'm just using the throttle to modulate and the rudder pedals left and right to turn. Like I said, the nozzle steering's on all the time, you can't turn it off, and it can be sensitive, so my suggestion is to put a little bit less than you think you need. Keep it as level as we can on the runway, toe brakes on, idle throttle, and stop. Okay, pre-takeoff checks. There's a whole list you're meant to do. Obviously, I don't bother doing them. Just the simple ones are make sure our flaps and slats are engaged for takeoff. So that button there once. Watch the indicator. Slats engaged. Flaps engaged for takeoff. If you press it again, you go to landing flaps. Flaps back up one notch. Back up into takeoff. Check your buddies. RCs are good. Knowing your weight is really important for takeoff and landing to know how the plane is going to react and how you're going to react. In this case, we've got a moderate loadout with full internal fuel, so an average weight aircraft we've got in this case. Takeoff procedure. Why don't we see what the official procedure is? We might as well just have this on. It doesn't matter if it looks ugly. We are going to apply our toe brakes, and we're going to spool and hold 70% on the tacho. When RC releases us, this is how you do it for a twin takeoff or more. When RC says, we will come off the toe brakes and go full power all the way and never be anything other than full power. Keep as centre as you can on your line. Obviously with the nozzle steering, just be careful because it can be very sensitive. You can, and I have, tipped the aeroplane over before. We will rotate at about 120 knots. That doesn't mean the plane takes off at 120 knots. It means we're going to start applying half stick, and we're going to try and get the front of the aircraft to lift up and then maintain a certain angle of incidence or angle of attack. We're supposed to achieve 12 degrees angle of attack, it says, and you use this meter here, so we want to get this guy here as close to 12 as possible. I would rather be under than over, because if I get to about 15 degrees there's a chance of whacking the back of your aircraft. That's called a tail strike, and it will damage your aircraft, and that will be the end of your flight. So get kind of 10 to 12 and hold it there as best you can by modulating the forward and aft stick. It says here it will take off at 150 knots. Well, it will take off when it's ready to take off, depending on the weight of the aircraft, the ambient temperature and so on. You just have to be patient and wait. It'll probably be about 150 knots because we're relatively light. We can retract the landing gear as soon as we lift off pretty much, and we've got positive climb rate and we're sure that we're not going to stall. Really important, make sure the safety bracket is removed at this point or your gear will not go up. Make sure that's done. Retract the flaps. Flaps up at about 200 knots. It says here full afterburner at 300 knots. I suggest just using full afterburner until you're at whatever speed you want to go at. And that's it. I suggest we'll do a takeoff RC and then we will talk through a bit of general flight. I'm in your hands, sir.
Brakes on, spool up. And brakes off, gate.
Right, modulate nozzle steering, try and keep us as centre as possible. We're going to be looking at our line on the runway, we're going to be looking at our speedo, and then our angle of attack meter when we start to rotate. 70, 80, 90, 100, 110. Aft stick at 120. Try and tease the nose up. There it goes, and hold it at 10, 12, 10, 12, 13, 12. Up we go, gear up, check the lever, up, flaps up at 200. Do a quick cheap view just to make sure, yep, everything's good. That's it, we just climb. Now, I'm just going to pause it now, RC, so we can talk about the flight. In terms of flying this aircraft, I am anything but an expert. I've had probably less hours than you have at this point, 5 or 6 hours, probably less. Things I've noticed so far. If you're going to go supersonic, and you will want to, whatever you do, don't come off the throttle, which will be an afterburner, off it and back to idle. You'll destroy your engine. That's what I found happens. Instead, if you want to come back to transonic, you come back to mil power, that's maximum power without afterburner, and you use your air brakes, which is Heffingray. I can't show you at the moment, but the Heffingray air brakes. That will bring you subsonic, and then you can start coming down on the power. It's an old aeroplane, it had its problems, and that's one of them. If you're going to get in a dogfight, use combat flaps, otherwise this plane is hopeless. I did my first dogfight the other day, and I didn't know about it. So combat flaps is that one there. If you want to turn them off, that one there. Apart from that, I would ignore all this stuff and just fly it however you want. I haven't found any other major problems. Which is going to take us into landing. RC, can you take us into a left circuit, please? Right, so we are turning into the downwind now. We're doing what's called a left-hand landing circuit. We do them usually about 1,000 feet above ground level, about 300 knots. speed if the plane can go fast enough, but take it with a massive pinch of salt. Just don't go supersonic, and don't go multiple thousands of feet, and don't go below about 1,000 feet AGL, and you'll be fine. RC's just in front of me now. We're on the downwind leg now, which means we're running on the left side of the runway against the grain of the runway. We're going to think about getting at a sensible speed now for our approach. So we're 300, we're going to start coming down on the throttle. We're going to extend past the threshold. That's the threshold to start of the runway by a couple of miles, which we'll want to do. Let me know when you're turning your base, RC. Generally speaking, the more nervous we are, the further we're going to extend past the threshold, because it gives us more time on the final to get everything set up.
Okay, I'm going to turn base.
Yep. RC's turning base. This is that 180 degree turn. We're going to turn left now to get onto the runway. I'm going to go out just a little bit further myself. I'm going to get my little sheet up for landing, see what we might want to take from that. Pretty much ready to turn the base. So left here, maintain roughly about 1,000 feet. AGL again, it's not that important. Speed, going to come down to about 250. In this base turn is where we're going to configure our plane for landing. That means we're going to get our flaps down to full, which we're going to do about now, about 250 knots, just to be about doable. Okay, flaps down once. Look at the indicator. Flaps down twice. Check. Gear will come out below 200. Not quite yet. I'm a little bit fast with full flaps. Okay, we are gonna terminate this turn. In fact, our gear can come down pretty much now. Gear coming down. Check the handle. Check the indicator lights. Green. Green. I haven't figured out what that light means, that warning means yet, so I'm going to ignore it.
Which one, the limb?
Yeah.
That's your limit, speed limit for your gear, I believe.
Roger. Okay, well, it's fine now. We're going to terminate the base turn on the radius of the runway, which means in the same direction as the runway, which we've more or less done. About there. We are now on final. We've got our gear out, we've got our flaps out. Again, I haven't quite got the speed right by the looks of it, but I'm still learning. I'm now going to pause it, I'll see, because I've got to sit and talk a bit now. I can't do it when I'm flying, so pause. Where are you out of interest? You are... Oh, you're just right in front of me, look. You're right in front of me.
Yep.
So here, there's no need for air brakes or anything, because our plane is incredibly unaerodynamic as it is, and it will slow itself down nicely. Important things. Place the velocity vector on the runway. I'll show you that in a minute. Next, incidence, 10 degrees. So we don't care about landing speeds in this aircraft. All we care about is angle of attack. If we get the right angle of attack, by virtue, we would have got the right speed for our weight, which is important. Angle of attack, as you know now, is here. So fly at a speed that makes our angle of attack 10 degrees. May want to increase that tiny bit on the very tiny bit of time before we actually touch down, the flaring, up to about 12, maybe 13 degrees, but certainly no more than 15 degrees. Glide slope, it says here about 2.5 degrees. Don't worry about it too much. At this level of flying, we just want to do something that looks roughly about right. This is on the low end, I would say. We're probably about 2 degrees, maybe slightly low. Well, maybe about 2.5 degrees. I wouldn't want to be any lower because our glide slope would be too low, and I wouldn't want to be much higher because that's more of a naval type of attack. So something that looks roughly like this. You can measure it, but it's just not worth worrying about. Just get it roughly about that, about sensible. We'll do a tiny bit of flare before we touch down to cushion the landing. We'll come off the throttle completely at that point. By virtue of following this, it means that we're pretty much sure we'll be within the speed limit for the parachute at that point, and I would suggest always using it because the brakes are pretty rubbish and it's a fast landing aeroplane. All you've got to do otherwise on the runway is just maintain your left and right. I think that's it, RC. I'm going to turn this off to get my way now so I've got my proper view. I'm unpausing in 3, 2, 1, go. So I want to get my velocity vector, which is this switch here, forward. Ping. Velocity vector is that little square. Put it on the end of the runway. That means I'm flying towards the end of the runway. You're getting a bit low there, RC. Right, I've got to get my angle of attack down now. So off the power while keeping the little square on the end of the runway. 6 degrees angle of attack. 7, 8, 9. Too fast. Don't even look at the speedo. Don't need to know what the speedo's saying. Retrim throughout so it's nice and neutral. Keep that trim. Bit like flying a Hornet, I suppose you could say. Veer fast. The angle of attack is too high, you slow down, and vice versa. Sorry, the other way around. The other way around. Stupid. That's just the outer marker. The inner marker, sorry. There we go, got it right there, look. Keep it all just like that. And I'm going to flare at the last minute. Keep power on, keep power on, keep power on. Bit too much power there, actually. Flare at the last minute to cushion the blow. And we're off the power. Meant to be in the middle, but near enough. Right, just steer it. P for parachute. And hammer the wheel brakes on. I like to modulate them. Oh, no. I went external view. It was a bad idea. Saved RC. Yeah, don't go external view to show off. That doesn't end well. Not in this plane. Otherwise, that's a fully landed aircraft. So I'm just going to quickly whiz over the important points again. Turn the sight onto visual. Use the velocity vector. So you're going towards the runway in the right place. Make sure your angle of attack is 10 or as close as you can get to it. It's fiddly, I know, but get as close as you can. Tiny little pull up at the end, just to flare, just to cushion the blow. Idle throttle once you've made contact with the runway. Keep going nice and straight with the rudder pedals. P for parachute, or bind it so that P for parachute. Do not go exterior view, it's a stupid idea, and just keep the thing straight and start with your toe brakes. Again, it's not a perfect milsim landing, it's not supposed to be. It's just a maintainable landing that you can do to have fun and get you down. I think we've completed our brief RC, which was controls, cold start, air start, taxi, takeoff and landing. Anything you think I've missed?
No, I think we got it all.
Okay, valued viewers, I hope you enjoyed that. And we'll see you later.